All right. Hello, everybody. Hi. Let's get my presentation up here. That's all. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. Actually, one second. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it. We're super excited today. Our October 2021 monthly webinar on the project management community practice. This happens to be our last webinar for the year due to the holidays. We have a lot of holidays falling on Thursdays this year or the day before a holiday. So we decided this was going to be our last one so that we could give everybody a chance to, of course, spend time with their families. So a couple little housekeeping things. Let's go here. All right. So if you've never been here before, and you may have not, because we did send out this webinar announcement to a lot of new listservs for the first time. What is the Project Management Professionals Community Practice? We're a community practice for PMs and people who work in PM inside and outside the SUNY community. Looking to create that space where you guys can share best practices, talk about different things around different concepts, and learn about project management. We do a couple different things. We do monthly webinars on the fourth Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. We have discussion posts from moderators and members. We'd like to put some polls out there and kind of get the pulse of what's going on with everything. And then also, we also like to advertise or put out free training opportunities and professional development for those who are looking to get more learning in on project management. Let's see here. So who are your moderators? If I haven't met you before, my name is Kris Lynch. I am the program coordinator specializing in technical programs from the SUNY Center for Professional Development. The other person that is our moderator, she's not here today, she's on vacation, lucky girl, is Krista Glassman. She's the director at PMO at iTech. Both of us, our information is up here. I like to say that Krista Glassman is the brains behind our organization, and I'm the brunt force. So that's kind of what goes on. I do a lot of the background work for her. Krista is my subject matter expert and everything like that. So today we are very lucky. We have John Brennan with us. He is our webinar speaker this month. John, if you've never met him before, is the CIO at Hudson Valley Community College. I work a lot with John because John is one of our project management fundamentals instructors with the SUNY Center for Professional Development. So he has offered to come and speak to everybody today about transitioning to operations. It's not something we talk about a lot in the group, but it is something that is very important to think about as you're nearing the end of a project, especially some sort of formal project. So John has some experience with this, doing projects at Hudson Valley and some of the other schools that he's worked at. And so we're super excited that John is going to talk to us today about this topic. So without further ado, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to let John speak and share his screen.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am John Brennan. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Hudson Valley Community College. I almost said the wrong college name there, which would have been hilarious. I am a certified project management professional, and I've been managing projects for 20 years, over 20 years. But as I always say at the start of my project management classes, I've been managing them well for a much shorter amount of time. I first learned about project management by the seat of your pants method, making a lot of mistakes along the way, some of them very hard. And some of the most impactful mistakes that I ever made or I ever saw other people make were in the area of transitioning projects to operations when the project work is done. So I'm super happy to be here to talk to you about some of the best practices that I've learned along the way. Some of them are easier said than done. Some of them involve a culture shift for your organization. So you may not be able to use all of them, but I hope you'll be able to take some of these home with you and make your projects go a little bit more smoothly. So let me ask you, Would you get in an airplane and take off for a destination if you didn't have some level of assurance that it was going to safely land when you got to your destination? Right? No, of course not, right? So then why do so many of us continue to see valuable projects miss the goal? Because we don't properly transition our projects. Colleges implementing major changes in systems and programs and technology and all kinds of things, we often suffer from lower productivity at first, and that can take months to recover from. And that's just the nature of the beast. And when we implement technology, we routinely experience training problems with the functional areas. And despite this, many of us still don't plan and execute our transitions from the project team to the ongoing operational team effectively. We underestimate the care and attention that's needed to execute a smooth transition, and sometimes we fall short. And this can cost us, right? It means significant costs in some cases, degraded customer service, operational mistakes, inefficiencies, compliance risks, rework expenses. It's way more expensive to fix things after the fact than it is at the start. Employee dissatisfaction and even lost enrollment. And we cannot afford that way. We cannot. If we really want to be successful, we have to adopt a mindset that the project is not really done until the new solution is fully transitioned to the operations staff. So we need to develop a process for that. And we don't want to wait for the project to be nearly complete. That's the worst time to try to transition or try to plan for a transition. You really need to plan that transition really early in the project. And you want to plan for both the individual and the team level transition. That means the responsibility of the functional team on the project and all of the processes that go along with it, right? You want to make sure that all of the things that you've got in your project are transitioned properly. And ultimately, at the end of the day, project transition are about people. We want to make sure that we have the right people ready to transfer the knowledge and responsibilities into the operation, and that we have the right people in the operational areas to be able to take those responsibilities. So to effectively plan for transitions, you have to ask yourself as a project manager or a leader of an institution, these 4 questions. If you've taken my project management class at CPD, you'll be familiar with the quadruple constraints that I talk about, or the 4 walls of your project, the CSSQ, the cost, schedule, scope, and quality. So similarly, transition of your project has 4 constraints too. Whoops, I went too far. And those walls, really, you need to view them as walls of your project and think about them as a wall of a house, right? When one wall, if you have a house plan and you have all the walls spec'd out at a certain height and you decide at some point that you want to make one wall taller, right? You can't do that without checking what that's going to do to the other walls, how that change is going to impact all of the other walls and making the changes appropriately. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a lopsided house. You're going to end up with the roof all cockeyed and rain and animals are going to be coming in and it's not going to be a suitable living space. So similarly with transition, you want to make sure that you know for your transition, these 4 key pieces of information. When the project is being transitioned and after transition, who's going to do what? Right? What responsibilities are each person going to do? Who they're going to report to? What are they going to, what's the organizational structure going to look like? When do they need to start to train on the new responsibilities and a new process? And when are we going to know when we're ready to transition, right? We don't want to wait and just say end of the project we transition, right? We got to know what we're doing, what we're building, what our deliverables are going to be, and when each of those are appropriate to transition. It is a mistake for us to assume, and this is an assumption that I have made and I continue to make in certain states, certain projects, certain cases, but it's a mistake for us to assume that project members can or want to be put into operational roles after the projects, right? That's not always the case. Also, don't assume that the other departments, the functional area, and that their individuals in those departments are going to be able to assume the required operational roles when the project is done. The skills of a project manager or installer or programmer are way different than a faculty member or a librarian or a accounts payable clerk or a security guard. So management, project management, and your institutional management needs to be focused on defining what that organizational structure looks like after the project is completed. We need to know about the associated roles and staffing levels required to support what we've built in the project. This is going to require input from yourself, your project team. You're going to want your stakeholders, your operational leadership, of course, the departments that you're going to be transitioning into, and potentially even HR, right? So project team members need to transition their post-project responsibilities to the operations, and they need to do that effectively, and that's going to involve a lot of documentation of what you've been doing on the project. Sometimes they're going to be the same people. Let's face it, a lot of us, we work for small colleges and we have small teams, and the project team is the operational team. But sometimes that's going to be a new individual or a new department. And that's going to be especially true for project team members who are contractors and consultants. They're very transitory, they're temporary in nature, and they're going to need to make sure, you're going to need to make sure that you've documented their responsibilities, what they did on the project, and what they need to do to transition that into the project. Right? So that's where I was talking about creating those individualized transition plans, not just a one-off transition for the entirety of the project. The transition plan for the project is made up of individualized transition plans for each person that worked on the project and each major process that the project is delivering. So each deliverable should have that level of detail so that you can transfer the process and continue the critical processes and the knowledge transfer. Handing over processes to different teams requires careful planning and coordination and communication between all of the affected groups and all of the individuals, including people outside of your college. Right? If you have groups, partners, companies coming in to help you that are doing things for you, you need to coordinate all of that. You can't just, at the end of the day, let them walk away and just be done, right? Because if they don't transfer the knowledge, if they don't say, okay, here's what I've done, here's all the things that you're going to do, here's the things that have to be continued in order to make this a success and keep this successful, you're going to hurt when they're gone. And you're going to end up spending that money to bring them back, and or if that's even possible, or hire somebody new or whatever, right? So you don't want to be in that situation. So you really need to coordinate. And this takes time. It takes leadership, commitment of resources, right? So it's easier said than done. Some of these things can be a cultural shift for your organization. So to help, I want you to consider this following list of best practices that we've come up with. First, and the reason this is first is because it's the most important. You want to make sure that you've cemented leadership buy-in, right? You want to make sure, really make sure that the people, well, first of all, you've already gotten approval to run your project, right? You've gone to your sponsor, you've gotten approvals for that, you've gone to the stakeholders, you've done your approval process, your project proposal and your business case, you've created your charters, all that good stuff, and you've got sponsorship buy-in for that project, right? But now with the transition, we're talking about other leadership, right? We're not necessarily talking about our sponsor and our project team and our stakeholders. We're talking about other departments. We're going to be saying at the end of the day, we're going to hand you a big bucket of work, right? We want to make sure that work is going to be done, right? And a project sponsor sometimes can feel like this is going to happen just because they want it to, right? They say, yes, you're approved to do this, and they rubber stamp that, and they think that's the end of the day for them. That's all they need to do, right? But that's not it. We need to have their full support through the entire project, especially when it comes to the transition effort, right? Because if we don't have that and we go to transition at the end of the day and the vice president in charge of the group that is going to be taking the transition, and they don't like it or they don't approve of it or they don't have the buy-in, they don't have the resources for it, it's not going to go well, and you're going to end up scratching your head and trying to come up with another plan. Understand where you are, where your current state is, what you look like right now. Taking the inventory of the project activities that require transition and include the attributes of the specific project teams and individuals for those processes. For example, maybe Bill from the project team has extensive experience coding in Python programming language, and maybe that is going to be required to support the ongoing operations, right? Also, identify current organizational redundancies and issues and opportunities. When big changes are happening at your organization, it's often necessary to address those issues and capitalize on those opportunities and reduce those redundancies in order to make room for the new project, right? Otherwise, you might be looking at hiring people and shifting responsibilities and things like that. So now is the opportunity. When there's change happening, make all of the changes necessary. And define where you want to be. Note specific requirements for transitioning the project activities, including the functional owners of specific processes. Consider staffing and budgetary constraints for each of those areas. Consider the skills and the tools of the people in those functional areas. Remember Bill and his coding experience that we talked about? Will the functional owner have that skill set? This activity will help define the future organizational model that will meet the operation needs and support the high level of change that's required. We really do need to track and identify first, really, but then track operation and transition metrics, right? So define some sort of metric to use to identify when a particular project activity is ready to be transitioned to an operational area. Include the leadership from those areas in the identification and tracking of those metrics so that you know when they're ready for transition. Like I said before, not all parts of the project necessarily need to transition at the same time. So it's really helpful if you identify metrics for each of the major deliverables so that you know when it's ready for transitioning. And now is a good time to define some operational metrics as well that will gauge the success of the project outcome and the ongoing operations. Yes, we're talking about transitioning to operations, and once the project is done, you've transitioned and your project is done and it's technically over, right? But is it a success if the end product that we put in doesn't operate the way it's supposed to? Is it a success if after we go live, the functional areas are coming back to us asking us for rework because it's not meeting their organizational needs or it's not doing what they're supposed to do? So use the project charter, right? You develop that during your project planning, and use the quality control documents, which is built from the scope document. And use those as a kind of a map to help you identify what a successful end product is going to look like. Transitioning a project can be difficult, okay? It's not necessarily hard work, but it's detail work, and it's a lot of work, right? To do it right, you wanna make sure that you have somebody focused on it, and ideally somebody that's not you as a project manager, right? You're obviously going to be involved heavily in transition, right? Because it's probably one of the most critical aspects. How to successfully give yourself an exit ramp off of your project is very important, right? If you remember the definition of a project, it's something that's got a definitive goal and a solution. It's a finite amount of time. It's got an end date. It's not going to go on forever, right? And it's undertaken to achieve a specific goal or develop a particular service. And one of those pieces there is that it's finite and it's got an end in sight. When, right? So that's the goal of the transition, and the transition leader is to help you transition the plan and help direct the overseeing and the day-to-day activities, assist the key leaders in transitioning to the new model, support those leaders in defining the team roles and responsibilities, the org charts, the staffing plans, individual processes and people activities, the transition plans for all of those in the team charters, right? If you don't have somebody on your staff that's got this ability, consider hiring somebody, even if it's just temporary for the project, especially for larger projects. I had a good example from Hudson Valley recently. Actually, right now, we're doing a Teams phone migration. So we're ditching an ancient Avaya analog system, and we are finally coming into the modern age, and we're deploying 1,300 new phones to our campus, and it's not just a one-to-one phone replacement. We're taking the phone off their desk, we're putting a new phone down. Sure, it's got the keypad and it's got the little screen, you can make a phone call, but that's all now powered by Microsoft Teams. So to really understand the value of that and to really take advantage of that, you need to be able to get in and operate in Teams, and the staff needs to be trained on using that. And department processes will need to be modified, call center processes and call queues and all of the stuff, and all of the queues that we answer support lines on it, and all that stuff needs to be considered and reworked if necessary to make sure that we're taking full advantage of the tool that we're implementing. So that's a major change for Hudson Valley, and we are short-staffed just like everybody. We've got the hiring freeze, we've got reduced enrollment, we've got budget cuts, and we don't have the people to be able to do it. So for this particular project, which was deemed important for pandemic response, we ended up using some CARES Act funding, and we hired in Core BTS to help us with that organizational change and to help us transition our project from the technical work that we were currently doing to the actual change management and working with those departments and helping us get through that process. So if you don't have the ability, if you don't have this skills on your own staff, definitely consider hiring somebody in. All right, in the project management fundamentals class, we talk about bringing in key stakeholders early, right at the start of the project, and giving them a job and a voice on the project, right? We don't want them running the project, right? We don't want them dictating every aspect of the project. That's not what this is about. We don't want to get to the end of a project and turn it over, or try to turn it over, and then have the functional areas or the key stakeholders saying, no, John, that's not good enough. That doesn't meet the needs, or it should have been like this, or it should have been done like that, right? So this is why we say, bring them in early and give them a voice. And here it is. This is it. This is their voice. Transition is their main voice, right? Obviously, you'll have them doing other things in the project as well, but transition is their main opportunity to help. So work with the staff in the affected areas from start to finish throughout the transition process. So let them help design what the future operational model looks like, right? And you're not going to bring every stakeholder, and not even necessarily a representative sample from every group in, but the person that you do, or the people that you do bring in, should be able to be a representative voice for their constituents and take what you've decided, or action items or questions that you need answers to, let them take it back to their constituents, hash that out, and then come back into your project team and work it out with you, right? It keeps them busy, it keeps the general public out of your hair, but it gives them a voice and gives them an avenue to get their feedback into your project. So let them help design that operational model, right? Let them help determine what the roles and responsibilities are going to be, what the staffing levels are going to be. Let them help with defining a comprehensive transition plan, and let them help plan and approach individual team charters. And we're going to talk about that in a second. After all, at the end of the day, those stakeholders are going to be the ones that have to live with the system that we put them in. So bring them in early, incorporate them into the operational planning at the outset of the project. And don't wait until operations have already begun, which happens too often, and I've done that myself. And you also want to cross-validate the team responsibilities and the individual roles across the various functional areas that are going to be transitioned to. So the operational departments, you want to make sure that you cross-validate those for all of the functions on your projects. So you want to make sure that somebody is accountable for all of the aspects of your project after your transition without role duplication, which is very easy to accidentally happen. Clearly defined roles and responsibilities are really the cornerstone to a successful project. This one's tough on projects because appropriate resource levels are subjective, and usually this is going to mean trying to squeeze more money out of the institution. So remember those transition and operational metrics we talked about a few slides back? Well, the functional area leaders should review and approve these plans within their budgetary constraints, within their resource constraints, and other constraints. They need to identify who's going to take on specific operational roles, right? You've created these transition plans. You're going to say, here's what we're transitioning to your department, right? They've been involved in that, and now they need to make the staffing changes that they need to make that happen. They might need to hire permanent staff. They might need to cut loose the contractors and consultants that help and make those permanent lines. They might need to buy more tools or more office spaces. And all of these things can cost potentially a significant amount of money, right? But if these pieces are not there, if you don't cover all of these, is your project going to be successful after it's trying to run, after you're trying to run it in a process? And if the answer to your resource requests are no, if you can't get the resources, if those functional areas can't appropriately run what is developed by the project team, then you have to take a step back and you have to ask a very important question. Can we afford to do this project? Right? That's when you then, as a project manager, approach your sponsor with this information, right? You need to, and that's, if you remember the project management fundamentals class, one of the project sponsors' roles is to try to help you secure more resources or clear operational roadblocks, especially with other executives, right? So, and to cancel the project when it's appropriate to do so. So if, for instance, I say, hey, we've got this great project, right? We've got this ancient analog Avaya phone system. We really need to get into the modern age and we need to get Microsoft Teams. And I say, okay, great, fine. Put together a project team. We're going to buy the phones. We're going to configure the servers. We're going to get the single sign-on working. We're going to create the dial plans. We're going to migrate the users, all of these technical tasks that need to happen. And then at the end of the day, we need to say, okay, we're going to transition this to the various departments. And let's say all of the functional areas that run call centers, they can't run with this new thing. It doesn't work for their business because they're going to need more tools or more people, and they can't afford it. They've went and asked for the money. They say no, and what then, right? Do you say, yes, we're going to continue with this project and we're going to call it done? Good job, John. We'll see you later. It's time to go to the pub for happy hour. Probably not so much, right? We now have a major problem, right? So if you can't afford to do the project, don't do the project. All right. This one is one of those ones that is easier said than done. The team charters. You can certainly create a team charter for your own team, and I'm sure some of your teams already have charters. Certain areas on your campus, I'm sure, have charters, like your board of trustees. Certainly you're going to have a charter for that group. Your academic senate, or whatever your version of that is on your campus, is probably going to have a charter, and any of the subgroups that go along with that is probably going to have a charter. But does your finance department have a charter? Does your IT department have a charter? Does your student support department have a charter? That is probably not as common. But the best practice is that each functional area should have a charter or update it when a new project comes on. The individual department charters, really, they help ensure the clarity of the team's mission. It's really kind of the same concept as a project charter, right? It's telling you what's going to be done, how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. It's the high level mission, and it's what grants your department or your project authority to do what it is that you're supposed to do. And having a developed team charter for each of the areas is really important to ensure that the rightful ownership and management of the processes that result from projects, right? If we know, for example, there's a finance office with people that are responsible for ensuring PCI compliance and credit card handling is done safely, and we then do a security project that involves that, we can look through those project charters and we can say, okay, well, this is going to be the functional area that owns this product after we do it, right? Remember, what I said earlier, no assumptions, no surprises, right? So don't just assume because they have a project charter that says we do this service or we do X, Y, and Z, that they're going to be able to and willing to take on that additional role just because it's within their charter, right? Their charter also says that they have enough resources to do what they're going to do, that they have enough people that they're going to, so if they don't have all of that, then we need to address that. Leaders should also identify at this point opportunities to gain efficiencies during transitions, like reducing duplicate activities across functional teams. And I'll give you an example of that. Right now, with the Teams Phone organization, the Teams Phone project going in, we're at a place now where we have the Microsoft tool built in with all of the video and the document sharing and the Yammer and SharePoint and OneDrive and all of the tools built into this Teams environment, the Microsoft ecosystem. And now we have, before we did that, we had Zoom for our academic department and Slack in our admissions department, and some of the classes were using WebEx because we do college in the high school, and some of the high schools were using WebEx, and so we're across the board. We've got all these different areas, and each one of those areas, they kind of run that themselves. So the admissions department has an expert that is the Slack person, right? That's not an organizational supported tool. So the IT department, it's not part of our charter that says we're going to support Slack. We support Zoom, and now we're moving to Teams. But with Slack, you decided as a department that that's what you wanted to do. But now we're putting Teams in as part of a phone project. You're not going to get away from Teams if you want to use a phone, right? So it's now going to be a required operational tool that's going to be in everybody's face. And does it make sense for that department to continue using Slack when Teams has basically all of the same tools and it's integrated and they have to use it because it's got the phone system? So they have to make a choice. The functional area in that department has to make a choice. Do we modify our team charter and say, we're going to use Teams exclusively, or do they try to shoehorn it in so that we're going to use Teams for this and we're going to use Slack for that? And if they choose the latter, then they're going to need to figure out how they're going to staff that effectively, right? So all of that stuff needs to be developed as you're transitioning your project and as you're developing and updating those team charters. Consider developing individual transition plans too. We talked about this a little bit. But consider creating those transition plans for people and project activities so they can migrate that ownership from the project team to the operational team. The project manager needs to really, really understand the time requirements necessary for transferring knowledge and onboarding new staff. And of course, retiring project staff back to their original responsibilities and transitioning team members into operational roles where appropriate. This is especially true of contractors and consultants who leave, and they need to be, and managers need to be particularly aware of the need to plan early for that knowledge transfer. The last thing you want to do is let that contractor walk out the door with no documentation and then have your operational staff sitting there like, well, what do we do now? How do we figure this out? And one of the greatest tools for project management and for transitioning and just about all of this is checklists. So how do you ensure that you don't miss something? How do you ensure that you've done all of the things that you need to do, all the things that need to be completed, checked, and transitioned? Use a checklist. Go through all of your CSSQ documents in your project. And if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend that you take the Project Management Fundamentals class that we offer regularly at CPD. The CSSQ, cost, schedule, scope, and quality, those are the quadruple constraints of your project, the main walls and the main pieces of your project. Particularly the scope and quality documents are going to detail all of the parameters for your project, including what will be done and to what level of quality. So use those documents, use them as a map to help you identify what activities need to be undertaken to successfully transition a project or a process. Let your key stakeholders help in the creation of those checklists. Again, at the end of the day, they got to sign the bottom of that checklist to show that you confirm or show that they confirm that everything is done, right? Project management, well, I always say this I joke in my project management class, project management is all about CYA, right? Cover your assets. Because at the end of the day, you're going to want to be able to walk away from that project and have it be successful. So don't miss anything. Use checklists, right? We use checklists very heavily while we're doing our projects to make sure that we did everything. We're going to use the same checklist. And in fact, oftentimes they are the exact same checklist that we use to do the work and check off that the work is done, that we then refresh, remove the checkboxes to, hand it over to the stakeholders and go through it with them to have them confirm that everything is done. And the last best practice that I'm going to share with you is one that I share with the project management class, and I try to really drill this in. Create a document repository, an easily accessible documentation site like a SharePoint or a Confluence or a wiki of some sort, right? You want to catalog and inventory all of the documents needed to support your transition effort. This repository and all of the other affiliated tools and documents, those are going to be vital for performing other transitions and projects in the future, right? And really, all of your project documents, not just your transition, should go in there. When you start a new project, one of the first things that you do is look at historical information, right? What have we done? When have we done this before? When have we done a project similar to this so that we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel here? We want to make sure that mistakes that we made in the past, we don't make again. So we're documenting them. Project management is all about continuous improvement and learning lessons so that the next time we do something, we do it a little bit better. Our project management methodologies get a little bit more mature, right? So if you don't have one of these document repositories, please recommend creating one right now. And if you can't do that, then create a physical repository, a file cabinet of some sort that you can put all your stuff in, all of the documents laid out in a readable format, something that's not just a giant jumble of documents that are not easy to follow. I like to lay my project repository out in a sequence that mirrors closely to my project, and in this case, to the project transition, so that when I'm flipping through those pages, I'm kind of reading it like a story. This is what I need to do. Here's what I need to do next. Here's what I need to do next, right? It's going to be vital. It's going to be so, you're going to be so happy that you did this 5 years from now, especially in technology. I don't know how many of you are technology people, but especially in technology projects, we do the same projects over and over and over and over. Things age out. Computers age out 3 to 5 years, servers age out 4 to 5 years, services, all that stuff, they need to be updated and replaced regularly. And while the specifics and the tools and the who's doing what, those things will change as people come and go and technology is updated. But generally speaking, the methods we use to manage those projects, they don't change all that much. You know, I'm a PMP certified project manager, and the PMP guidebook from 20 years ago, yes, there's some updates and changes. They've made some wording changes and updates. But if I was to go get that book without any prior project management knowledge, and I was to read that book and ingest all of the materials, it's not going to change that much, right? Some of the methodologies might change a little bit, or what they call certain things might change. They might update certain things, but generally speaking, I'm going to be able to take that and manage a project successfully. So knowing what I did 5 years ago on a project is going to be so helpful to me. And if you don't start now, then 5 years from now, you're going to look back at yourself and you're going to kick yourself for not starting today. Or 5 years from now, when you're doing the same project that you're doing right now, you're going to be able to go to that repository and you're going to be able to pull that document out and you're going to read through it and you're going to be like, oh, right, remember we made that mistake? Oh, man, I totally forgot. We forgot to buy that tool, or we didn't have that ability, or we didn't have that staff member, or whatever. And you're going to be super happy with your past self for making that a more smooth landing for you. And I'll leave you with this. Leaders really need to adopt a mindset that the project is not complete until the work is fully transitioned from the project team to the operations team. It's a very common mistake, rookie mistake, for us to kind of get the project work done and kind of like we step away, right? We may say, okay, Jim in accounting, you now have access to that system, and it's not really appropriate. Right, so it's not really done until you've planned that transition and that you've executed that transition appropriately. One example I gave is a security project we did at SUNY Delhi, and when I first started working there, and we had a brand new security system, all new cameras and everything, state-of-the-art monitoring system in the campus police department, screens filling up the entire walls, and the goal was to be able to identify something that happened on campus and find it on a camera, and then be able to follow whatever happened, no matter where they went, all over campus, they could follow, right? So if somebody stole a backpack or a computer or whatever, they could follow and see where that person went and see what car they got into and tag the license plate and all that good stuff. Perfect, right? We want that, they want that, great. So we did what we were supposed to do. We bought the Cisco security system. We installed the cameras all over campus. We put the monitors up. We installed the software. We got all the cameras pointing and recording and doing all that stuff. Everything was perfect. And we brought in a trainer, and we set the trainer in the room with the public safety officers, and we sent them through that 2-day training on how to use it. We didn't document a transition plan for that. This is one of the mistakes. Like I said, I've been managing projects 20 years and a lot fewer years managing them well, right? So this is one of my mistakes. And, you know, I thought I was good. We got training for these guys. They're fine. They're going to be fine. They're going to be able to run this later because I bought the training. Good to go. But what I didn't take into account was that there was no ongoing support model. There was no ongoing training model. The trainer was here for 3 days and then they're gone. And then we were on our own, right? We needed an expert in-house to be able to absorb all of the things that needed to happen within that system and then be able to train new people. When another police officer started working here, how did that person get trained, right? So, and that's exactly what happened. We ended up a few weeks after the transition, or a few months even after the transition, I get a call from the public safety office and they say, hey, we've got an issue. Can you send somebody down that knows about the security system? And the only person that really knew it very well was the project manager, because they had been involved in every single thing. And so, okay, Ron, can you go down there and help them out? And so Ron goes down, and the issue that they had was that something was stolen. Somebody's cell phone got stolen out of their backpack while they were in the dining hall. And they saw the person, they had the camera up and they saw the person who stole it, and the person walked out of the room, and that's where they lost the thread. They went to the other camera and they couldn't find it. They couldn't figure out how to jog back in the footage and get where they needed to be. And then when they found that, how do they get to the next camera and how do they automatically do that? So my project manager had to sit there and jog through all that footage and spent 4 hours trying to track down where this person had gone and where that phone currently was. And ultimately they were successful. They did get that phone back, but that was a huge black eye for my project. Even though the project was technically done and on its way, in my eyes, that was a transition failure, because I didn't document who was going to do what, who was going, when they needed to be transitioned, when they needed to be trained, what the ongoing operation was going to look like. So those kinds of mistakes are what we're trying to avoid in a project transition. So just like an airplane can't take off and land safely at its destination without an experienced pilot and well-defined flight plan, a project can't succeed without a well-led and well-defined and well-executed transition plan. So that's all I have for you folks, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, John. This is awesome. This is really great. Anybody have any questions for John on his presentation or anything else? With a wealth of experience when it comes to managing projects.
You talked about the fundamentals course. Can you speak a little bit more about what that actually is? I jumped on a little bit late.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have one coming up in November. There's still some seats available. We're still currently doing it in a Zoom format, which actually has been going very well. It's been very highly reviewed and highly attended since we started the pandemic. I think we've done probably 14 or 15 of these things now in a virtual format. So basically what this class is, a 2-day workshop where myself or Krista gets up and we take you through the fundamentals of project management, right? It's not really getting deep into any particular area, but we go through the entire project life cycle, and it's based on the New York State project management life cycle, which differs a little bit from the PMI and other groups, but it's all the same content, just chunked up a little bit differently. So we take you through from project initiation and origination, where the idea is developed, into the planning phases, into the execution phase, into the closeout phase. And in each one of those phases, we talk about the key activities that go into those phases and what kind of documents you're going to produce, what the outputs of those phases are. And we actually get into producing some of those documents as group activities. So it's very heavily group work based. It's not difficult. So we're not looking for people who are project managers by title necessarily, although we do get that quite a bit and they do find value in it. But we try to teach a common language, right? So when you go back to your team and you start working in project teams, that we're all speaking the same language, we're all working off of the same playbook. We don't deep dive into too many topics, but we are working towards developing an advanced project management course that builds off of the fundamentals course. And once that's ready, we'll start announcing that as well.
So I do AV installations and stuff. And I've just been kind of put into a big project that we got going here at Upstate Medical. And I was just curious to see if that was going to be beneficial for me to be on it, which I think I would.
I think it would too. And it really, it crosses all industries. It crosses all disciplines. You don't have to be a technology person to do this. I'm a technology person, so a lot of my experiences come from, and my examples come from that realm, but we do not make this a technology class. It's not filled with jargon in any way. It is very, it's appropriate for all disciplines, and we get all types in our class. So I think you'd find a lot of value in it.
All right, thank you.
Very welcome.
There
Right.
is, at the end of the presentation, I will put up a couple more slides and I'll talk about that class, and there'll be a link to register if anybody is interested. It is also in our workplace group. It was announced yesterday. So for our class that's happening in November 22nd and 23rd. We do have a couple questions in the chat. Maureen says, it seems most of the transition information is needed at the beginning of a project, but how much detail needs to be captured at the beginning and how much is left towards the end?
Yeah, so your transition plan is just like any of your other plans. And Maureen, I believe you were in one of our project management fundamentals class, so you'll probably remember that we have very high level detail, and each phase of the project we get a little bit more narrow and a little bit more detailed in our responses. The same is going to be true for transition planning, right? So if I come back here to the first thing that project managers, there we go. This is basically the stuff that you would need at the start, in my opinion, right? This is, and it's going to change and it's going to get more detailed, but if you can answer these questions, then you've got a good basis for your transition plan, right? Your transition is going to start right at the start of your project. Your key stakeholders are going to be right there with you while you're starting to build these things out. And as soon as you have put something in your scope document and your quality document, you can start working on transition for that, right? There's no reason you have to wait. In fact, you shouldn't wait until later in the project to start working on these things. You should start hashing them out as soon as you have some of those scope items defined and you know you're going to do it, because the faster you start figuring out, well, here's how we're going to transition this, and you say, okay, Jim in accounting is going to do this, and you start saying, okay, Jim and Jim's boss, this is what you're going to do, and they say, no way, I can't do that because I don't have the skills, I don't have the tools, I don't have the time, right? That's something you want to know really fast. You want to know that right up front so that Jim's manager can start working through that that issue right at the start, rather than being like, okay, Jim, tomorrow you're going to start taking that over, and then Jim's like, no, and now you have to, at the last minute, you got to try to figure out what you're going to do. So it's much easier to solve the problems when you have much more time before you're actually up against the deadline. Any other questions?
Don says, great presentation and a reminder for us that this phase of the project doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
I have
Indeed.
a question.
Please.
All right. So as you all know, time and money is always in short supply at SUNY. Okay. Many people think that project management is a time-consuming process that isn't giving much value. You gave a great list of things to do, lots of best practices. But if we can't do them all due to these constraints, what do you recommend as must-have? What are the most important?
Okay. Okay. So specifically related to transition, or do you mean like project in general, project management in general?
Specifically related to the transitions, the stuff you talked about today.
Okay. So the 4 questions, those 4 constraints, you need answers to all of those questions, right? And you need to know the functional area that's going to own it and have the buy-in from that functional area. Right? Plan with them what the transition looks like, help them develop the checklist for what a successful project looks like in their eyes, and make sure that they sign off on it, right? Those are the most critical elements, because those are gonna, if you do that, right, if you identify exactly what and when and how you're gonna transition things and who you're gonna transition them to, and they sign off on that, then at the end of the day, you've CYA'd, right? You've covered your own assets and you can walk away from that project effectively. That's not necessarily saying that, you know, lacking all of these resources, if you do these few key things, every project you're going to do is successful. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm saying that you can just skip all of these things if you're a small shop. I would argue that even a small shop would greatly benefit from just about all of these things. Right? Project management is often, I get this all the time. My department, my college came to me a couple of months ago, or a couple of years ago at this point, actually, it feels like a couple of months, pandemic life. But my college came to me and said, hey, John, can you help us implement project management? We want to make sure that all of the departments across the college are doing the same things that you guys do in IT, because we're getting mixed results. We're getting proposals that are all over the place and they don't have the information. And we want Gantt charts. That was their main thing. They wanted Gantt charts, everything. They wanted to be able to see visually what was going to be done and how long it was going to take. But it's not necessarily easy to just get to the point where you're doing those Gantt charts, right? There's got to be a kind of a culture shift to be able to get to that point. I lost my train of thought where I was going with this. What was the question again? Oh,
The
sorry,
small
I'm
shops.
back. The small shops, so all of that, it feels like busy work for the project manager, right? It feels like, hey, we're doing all these things just to say, hey, we want a project manager and we want them to have stuff to do. But really, when it comes down to it, these things are going to be helping you cover your assets, to avoid rework, to avoid mistakes, to avoid all of the problems, the black eyes too, let's face it, the reputational damage to you and your project team, your institution, the expenses that come along with mistakes and reworking all of that stuff can be astronomical, especially the later you find those mistakes. So when it comes to covering your assets as a project manager, having all of these documents and having all of these best practices in place is going to position you and your team so that when those questions start flying about why didn't we do this, or why did we do it that way, or couldn't we have done it better, or shouldn't we have done it another place, all of those, you're going to be able to go flip, flip, flip. Here's my document. Here's where it was decided. Here's why. Right? There's not going to be any room for doubt about why John Brennan did this particular activity, why John Brennan didn't do this particular activity, or whatever the case may be. So even in smaller shops, use some level of these documents, right? But with that said, project management is not prescriptive necessarily, right? Every institution is a little different. Every institution have different resource availabilities. Some of us have project management offices and project managers, some of us don't. And we recognize that. So take these documents and shrink them down to a level that is appropriate for you, right? We do the Project Management Fundamentals class, and in that class, we give a long list of documents that should be implemented. But we kind of pare that down in terms of what we actually do in the class. We filtered that down to the most important ones. We provide templates that you can then take and use on your own campus. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. What you'll find is that you'll use a lot of the same content. When you write something up, you're going to use that same content over and over again. For example, project proposals. One of the things on project proposals is going to be documenting how, in your business case, how the project aligns to your various strategic goals, your institutional plans, your middle states assessments, your strategic plans, your IT strategic plans, your information security plans, on and on and on. Right? So all of those things, you're going to map those out and you're going to say, okay, this security project has all of these things, dot 2.4 on our strategic plan and dot 2.5 on our IT plan and whatever. Now you've got that mapped out. Next time you do a project, you'll be able to take that document and just modify it. You copy paste it for the new project, change the details, but the things that you've mapped out about where things are, that doesn't necessarily need to change as long as the justifications and what you're working on is somewhere along that same line. And you'll be able to reuse a lot of your documents over and over and over again with minimal changes. So the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes, the less you have to repeat each time, and the more assets you have covered.
Thank you. That is an awesome explanation. I appreciate that. So I have just a couple little more things I want to share before we finish up. So hold on 1 second, please. Okay, last minute things. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will not be having monthly webinars in November and December due to the holidays. I will be posting some different resources out there though that you can use to kind of supplement those monthly webinars. There's lots of great things out there that Krista and I have been cultivating and kind of gathering. So we'll definitely be putting those out there. As well, if you haven't heard yet, there are some changes coming to Workplace. There's a link to this post. Just to let you know, Workplace will be transitioning at the end of December to another platform. So things will be coming out, more information will be coming out. So please keep your ears out for that. As we know more, I will be sure to pass it along. I just want to make sure that you understand that we're not going away. Krista and I still are fully committed to this group and making it as valuable as possible. Just understand coming in the January timeframe, things may be a little bit different. So please be prepared for that. As John talked about, we do have some different professional development opportunities coming up. That project management fundamentals is coming up. The dates and times are there. The link will be available in the slides that'll get posted in the group so that you can register if that's what you're interested in. As well, feel free to email me at Krista, krista.lynch@suny.edu. So that's there. And there's some free on-demand webinars from some of our third-party vendors that may be helpful as well. So, all right, I think that's about it. And I see. All right, I think that's about it. We had a great presentation today. John, I want to thank you so very much for joining us. It was amazing.
My pleasure.
And I am so happy that we have this and we can keep it so that we can refer to it for other things as well. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your day and we will see you in a couple months. Bye-bye.
Bye.